All right, everyone, welcome in. It's Election Day 2024,
Big day.
and we're here to give you the breakdown, everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Whether you're, prepping for a meeting later today or
Right.
just want to sound super informed.
Yeah, you came to the right place.
We're going to deep dive into all this election madness.
We are. We're going to be looking at a comprehensive analysis today
Perfect.
that really emphasizes the global impact of this election. You know, this isn't just about the U.S. This impacts markets and foreign policy worldwide.
Exactly. So we're going to unpack the candidates,
Yeah.
right? We have to look at how they're doing, what they stand for,
Yeah.
what the big issues are, and then, of course, the early results.
Absolutely.
I mean, who are we really watching tonight?
Right.
And then the swing states. Got to talk about the swing states.
Always a nail biter.
Always a nail biter.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. I think it's pretty clear that these candidates are
Oh, yeah.
very different.
Oh, very different. Very different approaches, priorities, even personalities.
Yeah, it's like they're coming from different planets.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's even more important to understand what they stand for.
Right, because it's not just about who wins.
Right.
It's about what the U.S. actually does over the next 4 years.
It's about the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And this analysis really highlights how these contrasting visions will impact everything, domestically, internationally, you name it.
Right. Well, let's break it down then. Let's look at some of these key issues.
Okay.
And I think one we have to start with is the economy.
Of course.
I mean, it feels like everywhere you go, people are talking about
Right.
jobs,
Yeah,
inflation,
yeah.
just this general sense of like,
Uncertainty.
yes, uncertainty. So how are the candidates addressing this?
Well, both candidates are really emphasizing their commitment to economic growth. I mean,
Right.
they both acknowledge those anxieties, but their solutions are pretty drastically different. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a small business owner. One candidate is proposing significant tax cuts, and their argument is that this will give businesses like yours more capital to invest, to create jobs.
And I can see the appeal of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
As a business owner, you get more money, you can maybe grow your business.
Exactly, exactly. But then the other candidate, they're advocating for increased government spending on things like social programs and infrastructure. Their argument is that by doing this, it will create more demand for goods and services, which would ultimately benefit businesses like yours by expanding the customer base.
So it's like that classic debate
Yeah,
about the role of government in the economy, right?
it really is.
Is it about just creating that environment for businesses to thrive?
Right.
Or is it about direct investment to stimulate that growth?
Exactly. And the analysis here, it suggests that both approaches have potential benefits.
I bet.
And risks, right?
Right.
So tax cuts could lead to short-term gains,
Okay.
but maybe less investment in public services.
Makes sense.
While increased government spending could mean long-term growth, but
Well, at what cost?
potentially higher taxes, right? It's that balance.
It's a tough choice.
Yeah.
How are voters supposed to weigh all that? What's going to matter more?
Right. And it's a good lead-in to the next issue, I think,
Right.
which is, healthcare and Social Security. We can't talk about the economy without talking about healthcare.
No, you can't. I mean, it's a huge expense for families.
Huge.
And it's a big, battleground for policy.
Absolutely. And the candidates here, once again, pretty stark contrast. One is pushing for an expansion of Medicare,
Okay.
particularly for lower-income families.
Got it.
Their goal, of course, is to ensure that everyone has access to quality health care.
What about the other side? What are they proposing?
The other candidates more focused on market-based solutions for health care. Their argument is that by increasing competition and choice within the private sector, costs will go down, quality will go up.
Okay, but what about, I'm thinking about people who are already struggling to afford health care.
Right.
What about people with, pre-existing conditions who might face higher premiums or even be denied coverage?
That's a concern. And the analysis does point out that those market-based solutions, while they sound good on paper, could leave some vulnerable populations behind.
Right.
It's a tough question. Is healthcare a right that should be guaranteed by the government? Or is it a commodity best left to the free market?
Right. A huge question.
Yeah.
And it gets even more complicated when you bring in Social Security.
Oh, of course, yeah. Especially with an aging population. I mean, people are worried. is this system going to be there for me when I need it?
Exactly.
And again, the candidates have different approaches.
Okay.
One is talking about strengthening the existing program, potentially even expanding benefits,
Okay.
while the other is looking at reforming the system, maybe exploring options like private retirement accounts.
So once again, voters are being asked to choose between these two very different paths.
It's true.
Okay, well, let's move on to another topic that we can't ignore,
Okay.
especially with, all the crazy weather we've been seeing, climate change.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like, this election could really impact how we address this global challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do the candidates differ on this?
Well, one candidate is very much about aggressive climate action, proposing huge investments in renewable energy, setting ambitious targets for reducing emissions.
So they're taking a strong stance.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And then the other is advocating for a more measured approach.
Okay.
They're saying, a rapid energy transition could actually harm the economy,
Oh,
lead to job losses. So they're more focused on developing cleaner technologies for fossil fuels, and they're promoting what they call a balanced approach.
that takes into account both the environment and the economy.
Yes, that's right.
So I guess the question is, how fast do we go? How far do we go? Do we prioritize immediate action to, mitigate the effects of climate change? Or do we kind of ease into it? Exactly to make sure the economy is stable.
It's about that balance, right? Finding that sweet spot.
Yeah. Tough choices.
It is.
Now let's talk about America's role in the world. We have to talk about foreign policy. Things are tense out there,
Oh, yeah.
especially with, ongoing conflicts, rising global powers.
All of that. And that's where this whole, America first versus global cooperation really comes into play.
Yeah.
One candidate's all about strengthening alliances,
Okay.
prioritizing diplomacy, working with international partners to address all these, shared challenges.
They want to work together.
Whereas the other candidate, they're more about a protectionist stance,
Okay.
They're skeptical of international agreements. They want to reduce foreign aid.
Okay.
They believe that the U.S. should really focus on its own interests first and foremost.
So one is looking outward, the other is looking inward.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. It's almost like choosing between leading the pack
Yeah.
and going it alone.
It's a stark contrast. And, it raises those big questions. What is America's role in the world? Will it be that leading force for global cooperation, or will it step back and take a more isolationist approach?
These are some big, heavy issues.
They are.
And it's clear this election is going to have huge implications
Oh, yeah.
for the U.S. and, frankly, the whole world.
For everyone.
But enough about the big picture, right?
Let's get into it.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
We've got some early results coming in.
We do.
I'm dying to know what's happening out there.
Me too.
What are we seeing?
Well, buckle up, because it looks like this is going to be a close one.
Okay, I like it already.
Yeah. It's early, but what we're seeing is those traditional strongholds for both parties, they're playing out pretty much as expected.
Okay, so no surprises there.
Not yet. But when you zoom in on the swing states and the suburbs, that's where things are getting interesting.
Ah, the swing states. They always deliver the drama.
Always.
Before we dive into those, I am curious about, there are all these experts talking about these specific groups of voters
Right.
who are really making their voices heard this year.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're calling them these key demographics. So who are we talking about here, and how could they impact things?
So one of the biggest trends we're seeing is this record turnout among young people and minority voters.
Wow.
Now, historically, these groups have leaned Democratic,
Oh, right.
but there's a sense this time around that their votes are up for grabs.
That's interesting. So they're not just voting along party lines.
It seems that way. Yeah, it seems that way.
So what's driving their decisions?
Well, young people especially are really concerned about climate change, and they're facing, this current economic climate.
Yeah.
They're graduating with student debt.
Right.
They're struggling to find affordable housing.
It's tough out there.
It is. And they're entering a job market that is still kind of recovering from the pandemic. So they're looking for candidates who can offer solutions to those immediate challenges, but who are also looking at the long-term issues like climate change.
So they're not willing to compromise.
It seems that way. They want it all.
They want action on both fronts. What about the suburbs? The suburbs were so crucial in the last election.
Oh, they were.
How are they leaning this time?
Well, the suburbs are always interesting because they're like a microcosm of the country. You've got a mix of people different backgrounds, income levels,
Different perspectives.
different perspectives. And this year, it seems like they're pretty divided.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What issues are driving that division?
It's a combination of economic concerns and social values.
Okay.
So you have some suburban voters who are really worried about inflation.
Okay.
They want that economic stability. They want candidates who will, help them keep more money in their pockets, who will just provide that sense of financial security.
So it's about the pocketbook for some folks.
It is. It is for some. But then you have...
And not just that, right?
No, it's not just that. You also have suburban voters, a lot of women in this group, who are really concerned about issues like healthcare, education, reproductive rights.
Right.
They're looking for candidates who align with their values, who will fight for the things they care about.
So the candidates have to kind of walk this tightrope between those economic anxieties and those social concerns.
It's a tough balance. And then you add in the fact that the suburbs themselves are changing.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're seeing this growing diversity in these communities.
Right.
More people of color, more immigrants, young families moving in. It's really shifting that political landscape in ways that we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, I bet. So it sounds like the suburbs are kind of a microcosm of these larger trends we're seeing in the electorate as a whole.
I think so.
This, growing awareness of social issues, this demand for economic security, and this changing demographic landscape that's just making everything so much harder to predict.
It really is. And speaking of unpredictable, we have to talk about another group that's having a big impact this year. Women.
With all the debate around reproductive rights
Of course.
and overturning Roe v. Wade,
Yeah.
I have a feeling women are more politically engaged now than ever.
They are. We're seeing record levels of voter registration
Wow.
activism among women, especially in those states where abortion access is on the line.
They're fired up.
They are. They're organizing, they're donating, and most importantly, they're voting.
Yeah. And they're a force to be reckoned with.
They are.
So what's at the top of their minds? What issues are they focusing on?
Well, reproductive rights are a huge concern for a lot of women. They want to make sure that they have control over their own bodies, over their own healthcare decisions.
Right.
But it's not just about abortion. Women are also really concerned about healthcare in general, about education, about the economy.
And all those things are connected, right? Like access to affordable childcare.
Absolutely.
That has a huge impact on women's ability to work.
Right.
And healthcare costs, they affect everyone,
Right.
but they often hit women harder, especially, single mothers, women who are taking care of their parents.
Exactly. It's a web of issues that are all interconnected.
Yeah,
And that really impact women's lives in very real ways.
absolutely. It's amazing to see them stepping up and making their voices heard.
It is.
It's a good reminder that, elections aren't just about these abstract policy debates.
Right.
They're about real people's lives.
That's right.
Okay, well, that brings us to the big show,
Okay, here we go.
the main event. We have to talk about the swing states.
The swing state.
Everyone keeps saying they're going to decide the election.
They often do.
I'm still a little confused about this whole electoral college thing.
Yeah, it's a little quirky.
Can you break it down for me like I'm 5 years old?
All right, imagine the U.S. is a big puzzle, right?
Yeah, I like it.
Each state is a puzzle piece.
Okay.
And to win the presidency, you got to put enough pieces together to complete the puzzle.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Not all pieces are the same size.
Oh, interesting.
Some states, like California, Texas,
Huge states.
huge. They have lots of pieces because they have big populations. Other states, like, say, Wyoming, Vermont,
Little states.
tiny, they have just a few pieces.
Okay.
And then you have those swing states.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that could go either way.
Oh, so they're like the golden pieces.
They are. Everyone's fighting over those
Right.
because they could make or break the puzzle.
So it's not just about getting the most votes overall.
Nope. You need to win enough states, and specifically the ones with a lot of those electoral votes, to reach that magic number of 270.
Oh, I see. And that's why those swing states,
That's why.
the battleground states where the race is super tight,
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that everyone's obsessed with.
Exactly. They could tip the scales one way or the other.
It's like a strategic game of capture the flag,
I like it.
but with states
Mhm.
instead of flags.
I like that analogy.
And the swing states, they're like the golden snitches.
There you go.
Whoever catches them wins the whole thing.
That's it. And that's why both campaigns are pouring all this time, all this money
Right.
into those Cree battleground states. They know every single vote counts, and they're doing everything they can to, get their people out there and to sway those undecided voters.
All right, well, let's take a quick tour then
Okay.
of some of these crucial swing states. Where should we start?
Let's start with Pennsylvania. Always a classic.
Oh, Pennsylvania,
Always keeps us
a
guessing.
real nail biter.
It is. It's a diverse state, mix of urban, suburban, rural voters. It's got that industrial history,
Yeah.
anxieties about jobs, about energy. Really tough to predict which way it'll go.
Pennsylvania, always a wild card.
Always.
What about Florida? It seems like Florida is
But
always
Florida, always at the center of it all.
the center of the drama.
Right. Florida's another battleground, but a really unique mix of demographics. You've got a big Hispanic population,
Right.
a lot of retirees, and a growing number of young professionals.
Interesting.
So healthcare, Social Security, those are big issues there. And, the state's vulnerability to climate change, especially with rising sea levels, hurricanes, that's becoming a bigger concern for voters, too.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a melting pot of issues, demographics, making it super hard to predict.
Yeah, Florida's always a toss-up.
It is.
Okay, what other states are we watching?
All right, let's head north
Okay.
to the Midwest, where we've got Wisconsin and Michigan. Both of those are shaping up to be really close.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These are states that have flipped back and forth in recent elections. They're seen as kind of, a bellwether.
Right, for the mood of the country.
Yeah, for the broader political climate.
What's going on there?
Yeah, what are the big issues there?
Economic anxiety is a huge factor in both states.
Mm.
Wisconsin and Michigan have lost a lot of those manufacturing jobs in recent decades. So voters are looking for candidates who can bring back jobs, who can revitalize that economy. Makes sense.
They're also concerned about things like healthcare costs, education,
Okay.
and the opioid crisis, which has hit the Midwest particularly hard.
So they're looking for someone who can offer hope, but also real solutions
Exactly.
to these really tough issues.
It's a tough ask.
Yeah, it is. Any other swing states on our radar?
Two more to round out our tour, Arizona and Georgia. These are fascinating because they're going through some big demographic shifts.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, these shifts are really reshaping their political landscape.
Okay.
So Arizona has a growing Hispanic population,
Yeah.
and Georgia has seen incredible voter engagement among African Americans.
Wow. So it's not just about the issues.
No,
It's about, the changing face of the electorate in these places.
that's right.
How are these shifts impacting things?
Well, they're making these states much less predictable. Arizona, which was once a Republican stronghold,
Wow.
is now considered a toss-up.
Toss-up.
And Georgia, which has historically leaned Republican,
Mm-hmm.
is also in play.
Wow. Things are changing.
They are. And it's not just demographics, right? It's also the issues that matter to these voters.
Right. Of course.
So, for example, in Arizona, water rights, drought, that's a big concern, especially for that growing Latino community.
Makes sense. And in Georgia.
Things like voting rights, criminal justice reform, those are top of mind for a lot of African-American voters there.
So it's this complex mix of demographics, issues, regional concerns, and it's making these swing states so unpredictable.
Exactly. And that's why it's so fun to watch them on election night.
I know. It's like a political drama in real time.
It really is. They give us a glimpse into the bigger picture, the political forces at play,
Right.
and maybe even the future direction of the country.
All right. So we've covered a lot tonight. The candidates, their positions, the early results, the swing states.
The all-important swing states.
But before we send you back out into the craziness of election night, I want to take a step back
Okay.
and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
This election isn't just about one night. It's about shaping the future of this country, frankly, of the world.
It is. It's a big one.
Feels like we're standing at a crossroads, you know?
I know what you mean.
The decisions made tonight are going to have this ripple effect
Mm-hmm.
for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the biggest questions looming over this election is just the level of partisan polarization.
Oh, that's a good point. How divided is the country going to be
Right,
after all the votes are counted?
right.
I mean, it feels like the political climate has been so charged lately.
It has. Is there even any hope for unity?
Right.
Or are we just headed for more gridlock and more division?
Yeah. Well, if one party wins by a landslide,
Okay.
they might have the mandate to just push through their agenda,
Right.
which could mean big policy changes.
Yeah.
But if it's close, which it seems like it will be,
Yeah.
we're probably looking at more gridlock in Congress.
Ugh, more gridlock. What does that mean for, everyday people? Does that mean things just grind to a halt? Imagine a landscape where it's almost impossible to pass any meaningful legislation,
Okay.
where every issue becomes this partisan battle.
Yeah.
Compromise seems like a distant memory. That's the potential reality of gridlock. It stalls progress on critical issues.
Yeah.
from climate change to healthcare to infrastructure, everything.
So it's not just about who wins, it's about how they win.
Exactly.
A decisive victory might mean we see some action,
Yeah.
but a narrow win, huh,
Yeah.
could just be more stalemate, more frustration.
It's true, and that's why it's so important to pay attention to these long-term implications of this election. It's not just about the next 4 years, it's about setting the course for the future.
Okay, so we've got partisan polarization to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
but what other long-term impacts should we be thinking about?
Well, another big factor is just the changing demographics of the U.S. electorate.
Right, we talked about the growing influence of young voters, minority groups,
Mm-hmm.
women.
All of them. They're becoming more politically active, and they want to be heard.
And that's a good thing. Great.
That's a great thing. It's a sign of a healthy democracy, but it also means that campaigns,
Right.
political parties, they need to adapt to this changing electorate.
Okay.
They can't just rely on those old strategies anymore. They can't just appeal to a narrow base.
Right.
They need to connect with a more diverse and demanding electorate.
So it's not just about who votes.
No.
It's about how they vote and what issues matter to them.
Exactly. And that's going to reshape things in some pretty big ways.
I bet.
We might see new issues become more important.
Okay.
New coalitions emerging, new strategies for mobilizing voters.
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities, but it also makes it even harder to predict what's going to happen next.
Right. It's like the only constant is change.
That's the beauty of democracy, isn't it? It's always evolving,
All right.
responding to the needs and aspirations of the people.
And speaking of change, we can't forget about the global impact of this election.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
We talked earlier about how the U.S. is, this major player on the world stage.
Right.
The decisions made by the next president are going to have ripple effects all over the globe.
You're absolutely right. Think about climate change, for example.
Okay.
The U.S. is a major emitter of greenhouse gases,
Mhm.
and its policies have a huge impact on global efforts to address this issue.
Right.
If the new president prioritizes climate action, it could strengthen international agreements
Right.
and really accelerate that transition to clean energy.
That's a big deal.
It is. But if they take a more skeptical stance, it could undermine all of that and
yeah.
have some pretty serious consequences for the planet.
So it's not just about domestic policy. It's about global leadership.
That's right. And it's not just climate change. The U.S. plays a critical role in international trade, security, diplomacy.
Right.
The next president is going to face so many challenges, from navigating relationships with China, with Russia,
Oh, yeah.
to addressing conflicts in the Middle East, all
It's a
over.
high responsibility.
It is.
It makes you realize this election is about more than just picking a president.
It is.
The next 4 years.
Yeah.
It's about choosing a direction for the whole country
That's right.
and its role in the world.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a final thought we want to leave you with.
Okay, I'm listening.
As you're, following those election results and just trying to process all this information that's coming your way.
Right, it's a fire hose.
It is. Think about this. How might all these trends we've talked about today impact your community?
Oh, interesting.
Maybe even your career in the next few years.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in the,
I know.
the horse race, the day-to-day drama.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember these decisions have real-world consequences for all of us.
Absolutely. So stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay curious.
Love it. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into Election Day 2024.
It has.
We've covered so much: the candidates, their visions, the key demographics,
Mm-hmm.
the long-term implications of all of this, which, frankly, I think are going to extend far beyond this one night.
I think so too.
But remember, this is just the beginning of the story. The results are still coming in. The political landscape is constantly shifting. So stay tuned, keep exploring, and make your voice heard. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
So are you ready to dig into some early results?
Oh, absolutely. Give me all the juicy details.
All right. Well, looks like those traditional strongholds for both parties are,
Okay.
they're pretty much playing out as expected.
Okay, so no big surprises there.
Not yet.
All right, keep me in suspense then. What is catching your eye so far?
Well, when you look at those swing states
Mm-hmm. The swing states.
and the suburbs, that's where things are starting to get really
Okay.
interesting, a little unpredictable.
Ah, the swing states. They always deliver, don't they?
They do.
But before we get into those, I'm really curious about some of those specific groups of voters.
Oh, yeah, the key demographics.
Yeah, the experts are calling them key demographics.
Right.
Who are we talking about here? And how could they impact things?
Well, one of the most striking trends is this record turnout among young people.
Oh, wait.
and minority voters. Now, historically, these groups have leaned towards the Democratic Party,
Okay.
but this time it feels like, their votes are up for grabs.
That's fascinating. So they're not just voting along those, like, traditional party lines
It
anymore.
seems that way, yeah, they're thinking for
So
themselves.
what's driving their decisions then?
Well, for young people, climate change is a huge concern.
Okay.
And they're also, facing the realities of this current economic climate.
Right, of course.
I mean, they're graduating with student debt,
Yeah.
they're struggling to find affordable housing, and they're entering this job market that's still, recovering from the pandemic.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
It is tough.
Yeah.
So they're looking for those candidates who can offer solutions, not just to those immediate challenges, but also those long-term issues like climate change.
So they want it all.
It seems that way. They want action on both fronts.
They want action. I like it. Okay, well, what about the suburbs?
Oh, the suburbs.
I mean, they were so crucial last time around.
Yeah, they always are.
How are they leaning this time?
The suburbs are interesting because they're almost like, a miniature version of the country as a whole.
Right.
You've got such a mix of people from different backgrounds, income levels, perspectives, everything.
Yeah. And this year, how does it look?
Well, this year, it seems like they're pretty divided.
Divided. Really?
Yeah.
What are the big issues that are dividing them?
I think it's a combination of economic concerns and those social values.
Okay, so break that down for me.
All right, so you have some suburban voters who are very worried about inflation.
Mm-hmm. That makes
They
sense.
want to see a focus on economic stability. They want candidates who are going to, help them keep more money in their pockets,
Okay.
give them that sense of financial security.
So the pocketbook issues are really resonating with some folks.
They are. They are. But then you also have those suburban voters, and a lot of women fall into this group,
Right.
who are really concerned about those social issues, healthcare, education, reproductive rights.
Yeah.
They want candidates who are aligned with their values on those issues.
Fight for them.
Exactly.
So the candidates have to kind of walk this tightrope
They do.
between appealing to those economic anxieties and those social concerns.
Yeah, it's a balancing act.
It really is.
Mhm.
And on top of all that, you were saying earlier that the suburbs themselves are changing.
Oh, yeah. We're seeing this growing diversity in these suburban communities.
That is interesting.
In what way? Well, you've got more people of color, more immigrants, young families moving in.
Right.
It's shifting the political landscape. And honestly, we're still trying to figure out exactly how that's going to play out.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like a whole new set of variables in the equation.
It is. It makes it even more unpredictable.
Right. So it sounds like the suburbs are kind of mirroring those bigger trends we're seeing in the electorate overall.
I think so.
This growing awareness of social issues, this demand for economic security,
Yeah.
and this changing demographic landscape that's just making everything so hard to predict.
It really is. And speaking of unpredictable, we got to talk about another group that's having a big impact this year. Women.
Yeah, women. With everything that's been happening around reproductive rights,
Yeah.
the overturning of Roe v. Wade,
Yeah.
I have a feeling women are probably more politically engaged than ever before.
I think you're right. We're seeing these record levels of voter registration
Really?
and activism among women.
That's amazing.
It is,
Yeah.
especially in those states where abortion access is, front and center.
Right, where it's on the line.
Exactly. They are fired up. They're organizing, they're donating, and they are voting.
It sounds like they're a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, they are. Don't underestimate them.
I won't.
Yeah.
So what issues are they focusing on? What's the top of their minds?
Well, obviously, reproductive rights are a huge concern for many women.
Of course.
They want to have control over their own bodies,
Right.
their own healthcare decisions.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about abortion. Women are also really concerned about healthcare in general, education, and the economy.
Right, and all those things are so interconnected.
They are.
Like, if you don't have access to affordable childcare,
Exactly.
it makes it harder to work.
Yeah.
And healthcare costs, those affect everyone, but they often hit women harder.
Especially single mothers or women who are taking care of their elderly parents.
Exactly.
It's a complex web of issues that, they're all tied together and they impact women's lives in such profound ways.
Absolutely. It's incredible to see women stepping up, making their voices heard.
It is.
It's a good reminder that elections aren't just about, these abstract policy debates.
No, they're not.
They're about real people,
Real people, real lives.
real lives. Okay, well, that brings us to the main event.
The big show.
We have to talk about those swing states.
All right, here we go.
Everyone keeps saying these are the states that are going to decide the election.
Yeah, they usually do.
But I got to be honest, I'm still a little confused about the whole electoral college thing.
It is a little quirky.
Can you just break it down for me? Like, explain it like I'm 5 years old?
Okay, imagine the U.S. as this giant puzzle, right?
I like where this is going.
Each state is a puzzle piece.
Okay, got it.
And to win the presidency, you need to put enough pieces together
Right?
to complete the puzzle. But here's the catch. Not all those pieces are the same size.
Oh, interesting.
So you've got states like California, Texas.
The big ones.
They've got tons of pieces because they have these huge populations.
Okay,
And then you've got states like Wyoming,
right.
Vermont. They have just a few pieces.
Okay.
And then you've got those swing states.
Yeah, swing states.
They're the ones that could go either way.
Right, so they're like the golden puzzle pieces.
They are. Everyone wants them.
Everyone wants them because they could decide the whole thing.
Exactly. They could tip the balance of the puzzle.
So it's not just about getting the most votes overall.
Nope. It's about winning enough states. And specifically the ones with a lot of those electoral votes.
To get to 270.
To hit that magic number, 270.
Okay, so that's why everyone's obsessed with those swing states.
Mm-hmm.
Those battleground states where the race is so close.
Exactly.
Because they could really make or break the election.
They could swing it one way or the other.
It's like a strategic game of capture the flag,
I like it.
but with states instead of flags.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
And the swing states, they're like the golden snitches.
That's it. Whoever gets those wins the game.
Wins the game. I love it.
So that's why you see both campaigns putting so much time and money
Right.
into those key battleground states.
Makes sense. Every vote counts.
They do. They're doing everything they can to get their supporters out there
Yeah.
and to try and persuade those undecided voters.
Okay, well, let's take a quick tour then of some of these crucial swing states.
Let's do it.
Where should we start?
Well, how about we start with a classic? Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania. Good old Pennsylvania.
Always keeps us on our toes.
Always a nail biter.
Oh.
Why is that?
Well, it's a diverse state.
Okay.
You've got urban, suburban, rural voters.
Yeah.
It's got that industrial history. There are anxieties about jobs, about energy. All of that makes it really hard to predict which way it's going to go.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's always a wild card.
Always.
What about Florida? I feel like Florida's always
Oh,
at the
Florida.
center of the drama.
Yeah, Florida is a perennial battleground,
Yeah.
and it's got this really unique mix of demographics.
Okay. Like what?
Well, a big Hispanic population, you've got a significant retiree community,
Right.
and a growing number of like young professionals moving in.
Oh, interesting.
So healthcare, Social Security, those are huge issues there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got the state's vulnerability to climate change, right?
Right. With the rising sea levels.
Rising sea levels, hurricanes, all of that. That's becoming a bigger and bigger concern for voters there, too.
Yeah, for sure. So Florida is like, it's this melting pot
It is.
of issues and demographics.
It is.
Making it almost impossible to call.
It's always a toss-up.
Okay, so we've got Pennsylvania, Florida. What other states are we keeping an eye on?
All right, let's head up north to the Midwest. Wisconsin and Michigan, both of those are shaping up to be really, really close.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, these are states that have flipped back and forth in recent elections.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of seen as a bellwether for the overall political climate.
Right, for the mood of the nation.
Exactly. And what's going on there? What are the big issues?
Yeah, what's driving those voters?
Well, economic anxiety is a huge factor.
Okay.
I mean, both Wisconsin and Michigan have lost a lot of manufacturing jobs
Right.
over the past few decades. So voters are looking for candidates who can bring back jobs, who can revitalize the economy.
Makes sense.
They're also concerned about healthcare costs, education, and the opioid crisis, which has,
Yeah, it's hit the Midwest particularly hard.
yeah, it has.
So they're looking for hope, but they're also looking for solutions.
They are. They want someone who can address all of these really complex issues.
Yeah, that's a tall order.
It is.
Okay, any other swing states we should have on our radar?
2 more to round out our tour, Arizona and Georgia.
Okay, Arizona and Georgia. Why are those so interesting?
Well, those states are fascinating because they're going through these really significant demographic shifts.
Oh, interesting.
And those shifts are really reshaping the political landscape there.
Okay, give me some details. What kind of shifts are we talking about?
Well, Arizona has a growing Hispanic population,
Okay.
and Georgia has seen this incredible surge in voter engagement among African Americans.
Wow, so it's not just about the issues in those states, it's about the changing face of the electorate.
Absolutely, and how those changes are impacting the political dynamics.
Right, so how are they impacting things?
Well, they're making those states much less predictable.
Oh, really? Yeah. Arizona, for example, used to be considered a Republican stronghold,
Wow.
but now it's a
And
toss-up.
toss up.
And Georgia, which has historically leaned Republican,
Right.
is also in play this year.
Wow. So things are really changing.
They really are. It's not just about demographics. Of course, the issues still matter.
Right, of course.
But those issues are now being viewed through this new lens.
Right, through the lens of this changing electorate.
Exactly. So, for instance, in Arizona, water rights and drought are a big concern,
Okay,
especially for that growing Latino community.
that makes sense. What about in Georgia?
Things like voting rights and criminal justice reform are really important to a lot of African-American voters there.
So it's this really complex interplay of demographics issues, regional concerns, all of that.
Exactly. And that's what makes these swing states so unpredictable.
And so fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. It's like watching a political drama unfold in real time.
It really is. They're a microcosm of all those bigger forces at play. Those national trends and tensions.
Right. And they often give us a glimpse of, maybe even the future direction of the country.
Exactly. So buckle up, because things are about to get interesting.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground tonight. The candidates, the issues, the early results, those all-important swing states.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But before we let you go, before we send you back out into the wild world of election night coverage,
Okay.
I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay, I like it.
Because this election isn't just about one night.
No, it's not.
It's about shaping the future of this country and, frankly, the world.
Yeah, it really is. It feels like, we're at a crossroads.
It does. Like the decisions made tonight, they're going to have ripple effects
Mhm.
for years.
Absolutely. One of the big questions I keep thinking about
Yeah.
is just the level of partisan polarization.
Oh, that's a good one.
How divided is the country going to be after all the votes are counted? I mean, the political climate, it's been so intense.
It has.
Is there any chance for unity, or are we just looking at more gridlock, more division?
It's scary to think about. What do you think? Like, what happens if...
Well, if one party wins by a landslide, they might have a clear mandate
Right.
to push through their agenda, big policy changes.
Okay.
But if it's close, which, it's looking that way,
Yeah, it is.
we're probably in for more gridlock in Congress.
Ugh, more gridlock. I mean, what does that even mean for, everyday people?
It means imagine a world where it's almost impossible to pass any meaningful legislation.
Okay.
Every issue becomes this huge partisan battle.
Right.
Compromise is just like a distant memory.
Yeah.
That's the reality of gridlock.
Mm.
It can just stall progress on everything.
Right.
Climate change, healthcare, infrastructure, you name it.
So it's not just about who wins, it's about how they win.
You got it.
Like a big victory, that might mean action, but a narrow win,
Could just be more of the same.
more stalemate.
More frustration. And that's why, we have to think about those long-term implications.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't just about the next 4 years. It's about setting the course.
It's about the future. What are we leaving behind?
Okay, so partisan polarization, that's one big thing.
Big one.
What other long-term impacts should we be thinking about?
Well, we keep coming back to this, but the changing demographics of the U.S. electorate.
Right, right.
We talked about the influence of younger voters, minority groups,
Mhm.
women. They're becoming so much more politically active.
And that's a good thing, right?
It's a great thing. It means our democracy is, it's healthy, it's vibrant.
Oh,
But it also means that campaigns,
right.
the parties, they got to adapt.
They can't just keep doing the same old thing.
Exactly. They can't just appeal to a narrow base anymore.
Yeah.
They have to
Yeah.
connect with a more diverse electorate, with a more demanding electorate.
A whole new ballgame.
It is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not just about who votes
It's about how they vote.
and what matters to them.
Yeah.
And that's going to reshape things.
Big time, I bet.
Yeah. We might see new issues become more prominent.
Yeah.
New coalitions, new strategies. It's exciting, but it's also really hard to predict what's coming next.
The only constant is change, right?
Pretty much. And, that's the beauty of a democracy, right?
Yeah.
It's always evolving, always responding
Okay.
to the needs and aspirations of the people.
I like that. Okay, well, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the global impact of all of this.
Oh, absolutely not. We talked earlier about how the U.S. is, a major player on the world stage.
Right, right.
Decisions made here have ripple effects everywhere.
They do.
Think about climate change. The U.S. is a major emitter of greenhouse gases.
Okay, yeah,
U.S. policy, it impacts global efforts to address climate change.
big time.
If the new president prioritizes climate action, it could really bolster international agreements
Right.
and that transition to clean energy. But if they take a more skeptical approach, it could undermine all of that progress.
Yeah, it could have big consequences.
Huge consequences for the planet.
Yeah.
So it's not just domestic policy, it's global leadership.
There's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And, it's not just climate change. The
Yeah.
U.S. plays a crucial role in international trade, security, diplomacy.
Right, yeah.
The next president's going to have to deal with China, Russia, conflicts in the Middle East.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to handle. It makes you realize this election, it's about more than just choosing a leader for the next 4 years.
It's about choosing a direction for the country.
Absolutely. And, that brings us to our final thought for tonight.
Okay, I'm all ears.
As you're watching those election results come in,
Mm-hmm.
processing all this information, think about this.
Okay.
How might these trends we've been talking about tonight, how might they impact your community,
Oh, that's interesting.
your job, your career, even in the next few years?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the horse race,
Right.
the drama of it
Oh,
all.
the excitement.
But these decisions, they have
Yeah.
real consequences.
They do. For all of us. So
Yes.
stay informed, stay engaged,
Yeah.
and most importantly, stay curious.
I love that. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into Election Day 2024. I mean, we've covered everything.
We really
The
have.
candidates, their visions, all those key demographics shaping the electorate, the long-term implications of this election.
It's been a whirlwind.
It has. It has. But this is just the beginning. The results are still coming in. The political landscape is always changing. So stay tuned, keep exploring, and most importantly, make your voice heard. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.